Alrighty, so you're looking to sell AI. Let's talk about money justification. Now, once again, who am I? I work for an agency. I see a lot of behind the scenes of 6, 7, and 8-figure businesses, and how really they are perceiving AI currently. Now, obviously, AI is booming just here in the Canadian wilderness, at the cottage, and I used to be a personal trainer, and we would sell 5 to 10K packages, and I would usually become first, second, or third out of 110 trainers. So I've sold before, and now this is how I would go about selling AI. Now, I did a part 1 on this. I'll link that here, but I think this is probably more important. So let's talk about money justification, because I find it to be a great tactic. Now, whatever you think of Andy Elliott, he's the one that actually taught me money justification. And really all it is, in my experience, is just really making the transaction make sense, or even the price point make sense to the consumer. So for instance, let's take a weight loss perspective here. So for instance, 5 to 10K packages. And what we used to do was, or what I used to do was, you have to make it make sense. So, I mean, again, weight loss is one of the most sophisticated markets. And you just hear the leaves there, my dog here. So bear with me. But, weight loss is one of the most sophisticated markets. So how would I go about selling $5,000 to $10,000 worth of fitness? Well, big part of it, and there's a lot to it, but at some points I would use money justification. Okay, so let's kind of break that down. Now, to me, it's just, again, making it make sense. So what I would do is I would go into discovery, and while I was in discovery, discovery is super important. It's not as, I think, to be honest, I think a lot of the sales market, or any market in general that is sophisticated, obviously Eugene Schwartz, you have to really make it, when you're in a type of market like that, okay? Now, I've done a lot of sales and marketing training, a lot of DR. I've studied DR for a very long time, direct response. I'm in Alan Saltanik's group, one of the best marketers in the world currently. And he he's been teaching me a lot. And so Eugene Schwartz would state that if you're in a very sophisticated market, you have to make it sound even more sophisticated. All right. So a little nugget here is that instead of talking about what the thing does, it's how it does it. So instead of just saying you're going to lose 30 pounds, because it's so sophisticated, the market, I have to talk about what my thing, like how it does it. So instead of just saying you're going to lose 30 pounds, it's you're going to lose 30 pounds because of keto. You're going to lose X, Y, and Z because of this method, this Chinese root they found 50 years ago. And now it's, done this, and this, right? That's what you start to get into. And it just makes it a lot more complicated, because now you have to find new angles. You have to be a lot more creative. And like I said in part 1, go watch that. But listen to this first. In part 1 this is a blue ocean, right? It's not a red ocean just yet. It's a blue ocean. And so people, it's actually easier to sell AI at this very moment. Now, let's talk about money justification. And with that being said, the reason I was telling you about this whole market sophistication was because I find in sales is not really that hard. All it is that people make it sound more harder, okay, or more hard than it needs to be, because the market is so sophisticated. So really, yes, there's obviously nuances to sales, don't get me wrong, but if you practice it enough and you do enough role play and you take enough calls one-on-one, and I find personal training, to be quite honest, one of the best trainings that you can do. I used to do door-to-door as well, and that's a pain in my ass, to be quite honest. So I found one-on-one personal training, like being a personal trainer and having that one-on-one experience, grew me tremendously. So it's one of those fields where you really get firsthand experience. But with the money justification, when I was in discovery, obviously I would figure out, okay, what's your expenses like, right? And you do this currently with business professionals, because it's going to help at the end of the day. And so how would I go about positioning my offer in fitness, and this is going to tie right back to AI, would be, a lot of the times, and what you do is you start to find trends within your prospects, okay, within your prospect pool. Now, it would be very common for me to see that, people would be spending $100 to $200 on Uber Eats, okay? Or they'd be taking taxis. They would be just spending money on garbage. right? So they'd be spending money on garbage, and you would realize, okay, well, if you want to pay for this monthly, all we would have to do is take away, a few nights of Uber Eats, avoid maybe the late night binging, at KFC or whatever, and potentially make some more food at home, right? And you just tell it, like, this is all marketing is. Marketing just your job as a marketer is to make it sound as easy as possible, okay? Now in fitness, let's be honest here, in fitness, no one wants to work for 6 to 12 months, okay? Because it's very tough fitness, right? It's easy to lose weight. It's hard to maintain weight. And so your job as a marketer is to make it sound super easy, right? Novelty and super easy to complete. Now, let's carry on here. So what I would do is I would just position it. I knew they're expensive, and I would say, hey, look, well, you're kind of already spending you're already spending kind of on training, just in all the wrong places, right? And I would say, well, you know how you mentioned that you kind of feel like garbage? Well, imagine you actually made some food at home. You actually lost a few inches off your pants or whatever, your waistline. And imagine you actually came here just, 2 to 3 times a week, and we actually did some stuff. You sweat a little bit. You felt great when you went back home. And maybe even your work life, your work got a little better because now you had more energy. And I'd explain it to it just very in simple terms, obviously, just simple language. I found move the needle the most because you're talking to humans, okay? And you kind of just get the feel for things as the conversation was moving forward. And if they didn't get it, then I would just stop and be like, okay, well, you look a little confused, okay? Basically, I would just kind of say, hey, like, it looks like you're not kind of resonating with my message that I'm saying. Where's the disconnect? And then I just ask basic questions, and then they would kind of tell you, and usually they just kind of end up telling you the main reason, okay? Now, objections, for instance, are kind of smoke screens. So you haven't found the main reason just yet, but you're close. And the problem, or the main thing with objections, and I like what Alex Hormozi says, is a lot of people, they expect to hear yes. And it's like 99% of the time you're going to get the no. So why not just train for the no? Like, be prepared for the no. Don't be surprised when they say, no, I'm not buying it. Like, everyone walks in there being like, they're going to say yes. Okay, now I've worked with some of those people before, and they're usually not the greatest salespeople, okay, because they're usually just too delusional. It's like, my product's the best, and this, and this, and it's this gung-ho attitude. And the problem with sales, again, going back to the sophisticated market, salespeople already have a bad image, all right? And so when you come in there, I love what Jeremy Miner says, when you come in there with this high energy and this gung-ho attitude, with this smile bigger than the world on your face, and it's like, you ready to buy my product, and yes, this is going to be great and everything. It's like, dude, relax. All right, they're going to run away from you before they even open up their mouth. Okay, so, and the reason that being is because, again, sophisticated markets. So you have to know how to handle and market to sophisticated markets. And just so you are aware, the 3 most common sophisticated markets out there are, what are they? Well, health, wellness, and relationships, all right, are the most common 3. And usually, as they say, Russell Brunson once said, there's only those 3 markets, okay? And then you have to find, and you have to kind of build around those 3 markets. So, with that being said, that's why that attitude doesn't work. And I like what Jeremy Miner says. I also think of it like, imagine being a doctor, okay? Every time you go into a doctor's office or a dental office, they're not gung-ho to see you. It's like, yeah, you're the 100th person I'm seeing, and it's just, what's going on here, right? So that's how you kind of want to dissect it, and that's the frame you want to come from. Now, frame is super, super important. You want to hold majority of the frame, okay? When people try to take, you will have some prospects try to take the frame away from you, especially business owners, because business owners have massive egos, okay? And what I have found with these business owners is that you have to be delusional enough, obviously, to build a business, It is super hard. It's not easy. And with that, the other side is a massive ego, because all of them think they have the best business out there. Whether it's true or false, not for me to comment on. But you have to know how to deal with these massive egos. So when you start saying stuff, they might get defensive, or they might, not tell you stuff, or they might just think I have the best business ever. And so you have to humble them. You have to do it appropriately, because if you don't, those are AKA fighting words, and the deal doesn't get done. And you're left saying, shit, where did I go wrong? Okay, so again, you have to know how to deal with a lot of these personalities. And during the entire sales call, it's a bit of a roller coaster ride. And all that really matters, okay, is kind of like, I remember too, I would go into some meetings, some calls, and within the first 10 minutes maybe, you start knowing, okay, this could be a lay down. I think I have this in the bag. And you already know, like 30 minutes prior to you actually closing the quote unquote deal. Okay, so, the transaction, the closing part is usually only takes a few minutes, right? A lot of your job, okay, is prior to that. And really the way I look at sales is you have to solve a bunch of problems. It's one problem at a time, right? So it's like, all right, don't screw up the intro. Perfect. Discovery. Did you ask your questions? Did you kind of dot your I's and cross your T's with discovery? Do you have all the ammunition that you're going to use to fire back at them? Okay. Now, you have to solve one problem at a time. And while you're doing that, basically your reward for solving all the problems is them signing on the dotted line. Okay, so that's how I kind of want you to think about it when you're doing it, right? And if you don't solve all the problems, well, you don't deserve the sale. Simple. It's a simple truth that some people don't like to admit, right? So that's how I kind of want you thinking about it. It's just simply one problem at a time. We all deal with problems every single day, and it's how you kind of put those out. And a lot of time, it's just usually reframing their thinking, because a lot of business owners don't know how to make decisions. Most people in life don't know how to make decisions, and I have found through sales training, I'm currently taking sales training right now by some great individuals in the space that have done millions of dollars in sales, millions. And sales is one of those things, everyone talks about that, if you can sell, you'll never be broke again, kind of thing. It's one of those skills that when you learn, it's like riding a bike, you kind of don't forget, and it's super valuable, which I agree. But also, sales, if you learn sales, it kind of helps you socially in life in general, right? You open up, you know how to navigate conversations, which is super important. You know how to navigate social interactions, and you kind of learn the nuances, which are super important, because that's the stuff no one really talks about, right? And that's the stuff that's hard to kind of watch game tape on. Okay, if you kind of referring it to that, like, you can study all day long, but then when you're actually out on the field, you're like, oh wow, this is a lot different than the tape I just watched. And so sales is it's great to learn. I highly suggest learning it. And it's not as hard as I think as everyone makes it. I think the biggest thing about sales, and one thing I still struggle with, is just the confidence aspect. Because I think when you have confidence, like imagine you had a bunch of dopamine. Imagine the day you had, you were super happy, you had a bunch of dopamine, or you're just having a fantastic day. It's like you're radiating with confidence. And a lot of the confidence is kind of the vibe. Just switching my hand here. A lot of the confidence is the vibe. It's the frequency you're coming off of, okay? And if you look at it from a frequency perspective, okay, or this vibe perspective, a lot of the time you'll realize that it's not about the words that you're saying. That's one frequency, but a frequency higher, tremendously higher, is actually how you're saying it, right? And that's why if you look at social interactions, okay, it's not about the quote-unquote opener, as so many people may think at a younger age. It's more so about how you convey what you're saying, because that's kind of the undertone of what you're presenting, And so in sales, you can immediately tell if this individual is confident, not confident, are they attached to the outcome. That's another super, super important thing, is not being attached to the outcome, which you hear quite often in sales. And it's one of those things where you can't really learn from like material. You actually have to do it. As much as you might hold your cards back, or your body language might suggest that you're not attached to the sale. Trust me, when you're trying to pay bills, it is hard to avoid not being attached to the outcome. I remember when I had to pay my visas off, or had to pay bills for the month, and I wasn't selling because I was a newbie. You don't go to bed that night. You just stay up tossing and turning, thinking, holy shit, how am I going to pay off my bills, X, Y, and Z, right? Because you start racking up visas and all this other stuff. So it's one of those things where it's hard to practice, yet when you're selling a bunch of stuff, okay, so it's a very off-on feeling. When you're selling, you're like, I don't need the sale because I already have these commissions coming in, right? So if you act it's part and parcel just acting when you're a beginner, acting like you don't need the sale, acting like you have an abundance mentality, because that eventually will start to seep into reality. And then hopefully you actually start selling, and then you can embody that identity of someone who does make commission, who does make some decent money, and who is not worried about the sale. And like in life, when you're not outcome dependent, you tend to do better, right? It's just how human psychology works. When you're trying to stuff a product down someone's face, they don't want it. There's this resistance to it. But, if I pull my cards away and, I'm not really that attached, look, you can do this, you can do that, you can go through today or not, but it doesn't really change my life, X, Y, and Z, all this stuff, all this jargon you can use. But again, it's not about what you say, it's about how you say it. So if you're truly coming from that place of abundance, where you're like, look, man, look, whoever, look, business, individual, it doesn't really change my life. Okay. I have calls today, tomorrow, all this other stuff. And again, if that's not you, right? If that is not you, well then subscribe, because I'll show you how to become that. But if that's not you, you gotta start tricking your mind, okay? The mind is a crazy, crazy thing. Now, it can be heaven and hell. So you gotta be able to navigate those territories. Reading books help, audio podcasts help. But you gotta start tricking the mind, and then slowly but surely over time, through the role plays, through getting the tonality down. Tonality is super important, right? Basic training on tonality is just, my goodness, just walking here, holy, got a lot of hills where I am. So basic tonality training is just, you have neutral tonality, you have trying for rapport, and you have breaking rapport. So if I ask you a question and I say, what is your name? Naturally, given that it's a question, I have a trying for rapport tonality. Okay, and if you look through evolution, kind of break this down, this is the nuance. If you look through evolution, most people with a trying rapport that speak high, they have high tone, and it sounds like they're trying for rapport, didn't make it. Their genes did not get passed on. Rather, it was the individuals, and that's why naturally you don't like people trying for rapport. You think they're maybe a little off, a little weird. Why does everything they are asking seem like a question? Or why does it have this weird high pitch to it? It's just off. Okay, so that's trying for rapport. You want to avoid that as much as possible, other than when you're asking questions. Because naturally, you want to sound confused, right? As Jeremy Miner might say, right? So like, wait, what do you mean, you know, X and Y are happening? Tell me more about that, right? So that's trying for rapport. Then you have neutral rapport, which is pretty much just, you know, if you look at basically like, look at a heartbeat essentially on a graph, right? Trying for rapport of the high parts, breaking rapport of the low parts, and then you have just neutral, right? So imagine your heartbeat not beating, I guess, in this case scenario. Not the best analogy, but I think you get the point. Okay, so with breaking rapport, most importantly, it's a down inflection of your voice. So it's, my name is Marlon. It's not, my name is Marlon, right? There's no question. It doesn't sound like a question because I'm that sure. So when you're confident about whatever, for instance, if you know a topic a lot, then you're naturally going to be breaking rapport. Okay, you're going to sound like, oh, wow, this individual knows what they're talking about. Okay, it doesn't sound like they're asking questions or unsure of themselves. Another thing, psychology-wise, no one likes an individual who is unsure of themselves. It's hard, they're hard to trust. Okay, so that's how I want you to act. One, in your calls, money justification, super important. And ultimately, it's not about what you're saying. It's about how you're saying it. And yes, sure, you should have those objection handlers in your back pocket just in case. Okay? Because the last thing that you want to have happen is you go through 45 minutes. You know, I've been the dummy that's done it. You go through 45 minutes of a pretty good call, and then you get stumped by an easy objection that you could have kind of just worked around and then maybe potentially close the deal. Okay? So, kind of just jot them down, the objections, really. Jot them down, gain some confidence. You know, if that means even, you know, I used to hear stories about, you know, people taking shots before their sales call because that would naturally loosen them up. Okay, now, I don't suggest you do that, but what I do suggest is that you potentially, it's getting a little messy here, wow. What I do suggest is that you potentially move around before your sales calls. Okay, so another little nugget here. In life, if you're ever scared, afraid, or you feel unconfident, a great way past that is to create motion, because motion creates emotion. Okay, so if you have it where you are nervous, your hands start becoming a little clammy, your voice tightens up because you're out of your comfort zone. Number one, that's an amazing thing. Okay, you should every week or every few days feel like you're in a pressure cooker. That's how you grow. And yes, that's what training is for. The training part of things suck. Like, for instance, I've been in fitness for years, okay, for over a decade at this point. And you realize that while you're training, it sucks. It sucks. And I've done Muay Thai, and, you know, I've done these Muay Thai classes, and I'm looking to get back into them. But while you're doing these classes and while you're working out, it sucks. Your arms hurt, your muscles hurt, you know, you're tired, all this other crap, and you keep on pushing forward. So part and part, this training aspect, and I would say, you know, you want to devote a little bit, obviously, not more probably than a little bit, depending how you are financially, into training. Okay, and if you're still with me here, I appreciate that. Like and subscribe. But what you want to do is you want to devote a portion of your income to training. You want to feel. Okay, now this is how I kind of feel. You want to feel like, you know, Hey. There you go. Sometimes all these weeds, because all these trees and sticks stick onto my dog, so I just gotta take them off. Look at her. So the way I feel when I'm in these trainings, I feel like the most incompetent human around. I feel like, number one, whatever I say is always wrong. I feel like my tonality is just awful because I'm nervous, because I'm being judged. But, okay, and you hate it at first. You go, this sucks. I hate this feeling. I hate feeling incompetent, and that's just us humans, right? So I take all these trainings, right? Or, I'm at the gym, and I can't lift certain weights, and it sucks. Or I take these Muay Thai classes, and I'm getting my ass kicked, and it sucks. And you feel like half the time, you're just incompetent. But you have to realize those times, they don't matter. No one is judging you, or no one should be judging you, because that's that free space that, the leader, whoever you're taking it, whoever you take the training from, should create that room where you go, guys, we all need to be fucking up here, because it doesn't matter out here, it matters out there. And so back to the training, when I'm taking these trainings, I feel massively incompetent. I hate it, and I feel like I'm in a pressure cooker. However, when I actually take these calls one-on-one, not 1v 30 people I'm talking to, 1v1, and kind of the court, kind of the ball's in my court, I perform a lot better. And you go, I get it now. Because during the trainings, if the training was super easy, that's not training, all right? That's not much of a training you're getting, okay? There's, training helps you at the thing you're trying to do. It doesn't, Navy SEALs don't train to just sit around all day. They train because they go, look, this shit we're doing here is going to make us a ton better out there. And that's all that matters. And so, yes, you'll feel like you'll feel like you're in a pressure cooker. You'll feel like your hair's falling out, for fuck's sakes. All right? But really, all that fucking matters is that when you actually go fucking step on the court, you go, these shots are going in, and I'm actually playing a lot better. All right? And so, I would say take trainings, invest in yourself, obviously. Especially at this age, probably, 25 to 35. Guys, you gotta be investing in yourself. Course after course after course, book after book after book, audiobook, health, fitness. Get that shit dialed in before it's too late. Because there does come a time when you have family, you have kids, and I see it, okay? I see it with these business owners, man. It's hard. It is difficult. It's not fucking easy. And talk about a pressure cooker. A lot of these business owners are in one. So if you can make it sound like, hey, I'm going to take you out of this current hell you're in, this pressure cooker that you're in, and kind of throw you a lifeline via AI, they start listening. And then you just start riffing off their pain points, right? Asking proper questions, not dumb questions. They're business owners. They've been around the block, okay? Start asking them proper questions, and you start just slowly moving the needle. And then again, you throw in some humor, you find those pockets to make things light, to make things fun. Why? Because you don't care about the outcome, okay? So the mentality should be, this thing can go to shit, and I don't care. That is the mentality, because I'm not trying to be friends with the person I'm trying to sell. I'm trying to help them. And again, like I've stated before, your product should actually help them, right? It shouldn't be that you're just trying to make commission. Yes, that's a byproduct of it, but we're not here just to cash a check and then screw the prospect over. Okay, at least that's not how I work. So, you want to find those humorous pockets. So you want to find those pockets of humor, kind of sprinkle them in, make things fun, make things light. And then eventually, you will have some objections, all right? 99% of the time, they're going to say no. Be prepared for that. Take some role plays. Maybe get some training on sales. Because I'm telling you, sales is, anyone can get into sales, okay? There's no barrier to sales. No one is stopping you from selling things, okay? Like, you can go knock door to door 24 hours a day, and no one's going to say, hey, you can't do that no more. Okay, you get my point. I'm No one's going to do that, but you get my point. So, you know, sales is a valuable skill. It's not everything. Don't get me wrong. It's not everything. But it's a great way to get your foot into a door. It's a great way to start making some money. We can talk about that later. But get some training. Figure out the nuances and understand the person. Are they A-type? You know, are they B-type? Who am I dealing with? Would they find this funny? And 30 minutes into a call, you should be able to identify who you're dealing with and then be able to kind of navigate the conversation as it follows, okay? And kind of off their personality type, if you will, right? And then eventually you ask in a non-cool, you know, in a non-try-hard, cool, nonchalant way, like, do you want to buy this or not, right? And when they say no, majority of them will. When they say no, or they say, I have to talk to my business partner, I have to talk to my my partner, or I don't have the money right now, then sure, you take out those cards in your back pocket and you go, no problem at all. I knew you were going to say that. And you're going to lay one down. And then they're going to say, well, that makes a lot of fucking sense. All right, well, I'm going to pull, you know, and then you're kind of just dueling it out. Then you're really fighting, you know, you're just dueling it out between you and the prospect. And, you know, they're going to give you, they're going to give you a jab. They're going to give you, aka another objection. You're going to say, totally fine. That makes a ton of sense. You're going to pull your card out and you're going to lay it down. And you go, yeah, what else do you got? You know, because I'm here to help you. So, I mean, we can do this all day. We can run in circles and you can tell me all these objections. Another thing, too, is if your offer, you know, if you're a beginner in AI, again, depending on the confidence, man, confidence is it's crazy. It's so big, like, you know, confidence dictates, it's called leveling, all right? Confidence dictates, like, what level you're at. So, like, you know, for instance, if you take an individual and he's, like, 6'4", you know, he's, you know, I don't know, let's take Liam Hemsworth, right? Or Chris Hemsworth, for instance. It's like they're confident individuals, right? Or if you take like a really good looking individual, it's like they're confident. And they're confident because obviously they have all these good traits, right? But what I'm trying to say with leveling is that depending on how you say things, depending on how you sound, either you're going to be like, wow, this individual has been in this market for X amount of time, okay, because he's just confident, right? But if you're starting out, it's like, this guy doesn't even know how to start a conversation. This guy doesn't know how to lead the conversation, right? And you kind of level yourself naturally via your level of confidence, the spectrum of confidence that you're on, okay? And so, like, that's why if you've been doing sales for 5 years, you can naturally just kind of spin up an offer, take some sales calls, and you can probably, you have a very, very high chance of selling things, right? But if you're new, you're nervous and all this other stuff, and you have no confidence. So, confidence is one of those things where it levels you. It basically shows you your cards. It shows the prospect your cards, okay? And aka, the more confidence, you know, the better chance you have, because that's the that's the undercurrent of who you are. That's the undercurrent of, that's the frame you're holding. It's that confidence frame, okay? So 35 minutes, wow. The confidence is great to have. So, you know, invest in some training, be confident, step in there. Sometimes I used to think about all the things I've done and be like, okay, you know, there's no need for me not to be confident. And obviously it's harder than it sounds, don't get me wrong, but eventually you start getting to the point where you're like, okay, I can get the hang of things. It's like, come on. And then maybe you do some jumping jacks before the phone call. Because why? Because motion creates emotion. Say that with me. Motion creates emotion. And if you can provide motion to your body, you naturally shut off the thinking mind. Because right now, when you're about to take that sales call, your thinking mind is jacked to 10. And you can't think. And when you can't think, you come off as weird. You come off as needy. You come off as just someone that I probably don't want to spend 30 minutes or 45 minutes or an hour talking to. So you shut off the thinking mind. Then you throw in some laughter, and then you kind of loosen up naturally. Your shoulders drop a little bit. your voice untightens. And then you ask, hey, do you want to go through? And then again, you're kind of dueling it out. And one thing too, Andy Elliott taught me this, or Jeremy Minor, is you just want to ask a few different times, right? It's like, remember as a kid when you wanted something and you kept asking your mom? It's like usually the first time she didn't say yes. Okay, it wasn't like, hey, can I get these Legos? And then your mom's like, yes. It's like, no, right? But what'd you do? You kept bugging her, right? You kept bugging your parents. And then what happened? Usually they caved in. Now, you're not obviously going to do that. But you can do it in like a fun vibe, you know, like a fun, light-mannered, energetic, charismatic vibe. You're like, you want to buy? No. Okay, no problem at all. Blah, 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 blah. Maybe a minute later. All right, so you want to go through? No. Okay, maybe a minute later. You know, you squash some more objections. You make them feel more comfortable, more heard. They trust you a little more. Then you ask again. And until really they say, fuck off. Or they storm out of the room. Or they just do something where you're like, okay, you know, I've pressed enough. You know, let's just kind of maybe regroup next week. Or, you know, can we set up something in the near future here? And then you kind of just follow up with them, right? A lot of the game, too, is the follow-up game. And the follow-up game, there's a science, there's an art to the follow-up game. It's not this LinkedIn jargon garbage that you see, and it's like just this nonsense. You're saying the same shit that he said, as they say in 8 Mile, right? So there's an art and science to it, okay? As much as it is just like, go do it, there's this art, there's this vibe, there's this flow, there's this energy. And so you got to keep asking. I used to ask about 3 times, okay? And again, it's feeling it out. It's case by case. It's not always. It's this case by case where you go, you want to buy? No. You want to buy again? No. You want to buy again? No. You sure you don't want to buy? Come on. You know, it's like, come on, this could really help you, you know, all this other stuff, whatever. And what would happen was that usually they would say, all right, you know what? I think you're right. Let's do it. Okay. And again, you're not going to ask all these times if you F up like the discovery call. Okay. If you don't have the AMO, well, there's not much you can shoot back at them. Sort to, you know, to that analogy where in the discovery call, you want to basically get ammunition. That's why you're asking all these questions. You're basically just taking notes mentally, or you're actually taking notes. I used to just take notes. But you're just taking all these notes because that's the ammunition you're going to essentially fire back at them when you're asking for the sale. And again, asking for the sale, it's very quickly. Very, very quick. And as a beginner, most of the time, you're going to out-talk them out of the sale. You're going to have the sale, and then you keep rambling on. And as important as what to say is, it's also super important what not to say. And a lot of time as a beginner, it's what not to say. It's, all right, dude, you're actually sounding a little off here. You're sounding a little weird. Like you're just doing it wrong. So let's kind of just work on that. And then you'll naturally just be able to ask these questions. You know, once you turn off the thinking mind, that was my biggest, and it still is my biggest obstacle. It's that sometimes, yes, the nerves get the best of you. Sometimes you just don't feel it that day, right? Like you're dealing with emotions. And so what do? You shut off the thinking mind so you can actually think. Okay? Because when you're in your own shit, when you're in your own head, nothing good comes out of that. So, but what I was going to say is that if you have a guarantee, all right, I got this from Hormozy. If you have a guarantee, my best thing, and it depends if your follow-up, all right, so it depends if your follow-up. Hormozy says the sale isn't actually done until about, I think he says about 24 to 72 hours. So you really don't make up your mind, right? Because you buy with emotion and you justify it with logic. And so imagine I sign the dot, but then I think about it, right? You start, was this really the right decision? After you talk to your spouse, your business partner, was this really the right decision? In most cases, they start thinking, maybe I really didn't need it. I need to go back and cancel and get a refund. And so if you do have a guarantee, I got this from Hormozy, if if you do have a guarantee, the greatest thing I found was that, I mean, my favorite line was, you know, it would be like, I would ask a few times, no, okay, make them trust you, make them, and then you go, okay. And I get this from Cole Gordon as well, go through his training, great training. Cole Gordon, I think it's 7-Figure Academy. One thing I used to say was, okay, well, you know, with people in your scenario, what we usually do, you know, who don't want kind of the package, but who do want to excel, and they do know that they kind of need the one-on-one attention, what we do in your case is we just do, you know, we have this guarantee. I called it the test drive guarantee. And again, when it comes to sales, you make it sound super, super easy. And the reason I use test drive guarantee, because everyone knows what a test drive is. Everyone's done a test drive. Everyone knows, all right, you test drive out the car. I know what to expect. So, you know, you do that, and that's through analogies, and that's through basically wording that they understand. And the more wording that they understand, the more easy it is for them to digest what you're saying. So essentially, I would say, you know, for people in your specific situation, I think the best thing to potentially do, if I can offer a recommendation, would be to, you know, go through with it. And this is the line here. If at the, you know, depending how long your guarantee is, for us, it was about, I think it was 10 days. The current offer I'm on doesn't have a guarantee, but, you know, and there's ways around the guarantee. You don't have to offer a guarantee, but if you do, super, super simple to get people across the line. So what I would say would be, you know, if it's minute 4 or day 4, you can always come back and you can get your free refund. I just want you to test it out, because you can't really make, this is the line here, you can't really make a informed decision being on the outside, right? It's like kind of going to a car dealership and kind of judging the car by the looks of it, right? And so what I'm proposing for you to do is actually step into the car, drive the car around for, you know, you have 20 days, you have X amount of time, and getting to feel how it feels. And again, if at minute 4 or day 4 you don't like it, you can always come back, and I would happily give you a courteous refund. Okay. And how I learned that was, yes, through the training. But I used to do as well was, you know, I like copywriting, I love marketing. Again, I've done a lot of direct response training, and I used to hand write out sales letters. Okay, I have the greats, Gary Halbert, of John Carlton, all these greats. And you start realizing sales is 1-to-1, okay? But copywriting and sales messaging via the internet, okay, via online, is 1-to-many, okay? So you start understanding, man, these people have, you know, all these great sales letters that I'm handwriting. Eventually that starts coming out of my mouth because I am writing them, I can remember them, and I just start saying their endings. And that's how I would kind of close. And man, you're like, damn, this actually works. And so that's a great way to go about your guarantee if you have one. If you don't have one, very simple. Okay, you don't spend too much time on it. You don't even need to bring it up. Sometimes they ask, do you have a guarantee? Then you can always object that guarantee. You know, you can always say, you know what, sadly we don't. You know, the only thing I can guarantee is taxes and death. But, you know, I'm just curious, why do you ask that? Right, there's so many ways around it. Don't harp too much on it. You don't want to stay, again, you don't want to let them control the frame, so you want to throw the ball back at them. But look, so this is a long video. Look at that. Gorgeous in Canada right now. Getting a little cooler here, but look at that, beautiful. So that's sales for you. Okay, now I invite you to watch the first training. Okay, link up here, and I also invite you to subscribe and like. Okay, I'm trying to grow. We're trying to grow together. And so if you want to kind of hop on a cool journey, I hope, and you don't hate listening to me, well, subscribe, like, and I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.